Let's talk transfer portal for a couple minutes before I let you get out of here. UF obviously was not super active in the portal when it came to landing guys in the winter window. Do you think that they just really didn't need much, or what's your take on that window?
Yeah, it wasn't going to be a large class to begin with. I think a lot of people kind of assumed it was, depending on what positions. I think Florida's always pretty selective when it comes to the portal. I think a lot of fans look at them as like, man, why didn't we offer this guy, or why come these schools offered before us? Billy Napier's always been pretty selective when it comes to guys like that, and we knew kind of behind the scenes that it wasn't going to be a huge class right away. Or even when Elijah Badger committed, that was in the spring window when he committed a few years ago. So I think overall, I think Florida will target some guys in the spring, depending who's out there. They're not just going to overextend for someone who maybe just be a contributor. If it's a no-brainer type of guy, they're going to go after. But I think overall, too, you look at receiver. You got J. Michael Sturtevant from obviously from UCLA, an experienced guy that comes in at wide receiver, and obviously Florida offered a lot of other receivers too, but they kind of had they kind of were aware of the Dallas Wilson situation, kind of behind the scenes, what was going on there. So when people thought they were going to get receivers with DK and Badger gone, adding Dallas Wilson actually was one of those spots. So I think you get a young guy, a 5-star talent who can come in and obviously has to kind of get his feet wet and get used to college, but he's an elite talent that Florida said, hey, I'd rather take a Dallas Wilson, a 5-star young guy we're going to have for a few years, rather than maybe bringing one guy that's going to have one good season. But and then you look at quarterback. Obviously, that was the biggest thing. Deshaun Purdy was in the class early on. We all knew getting an extra quarterback on the roster was going to be one of the bigger priorities. Someone who could back up DJ Lagway. So I feel with Harrison Bailey, obviously he had a good bowl game, a well-traveled guy, former big-time recruit. So I think you did the best you could there. I think it's a guy you had to have a guy who can come in and accept that role, knowing, hey, I'm going to be a backup, but a guy they feel confident in if he does have to step in. He has experience. He's played a lot of football. And one other thing too, I know O line. I think with Florida, if it's a no-brainer offensive tackle in the spring window, a big offensive lineman, Florida will likely pursue them. But I know a lot of people were saying, hey, how come they didn't really add any linemen in the portal? From talking to a few people close to the program, I know the staff is very high on Fletcher Westfall and Bryce Lovett. Those are two guys that from what I've been hearing, they've been really turning heads in workouts in the offseason. So that made them kind of hesitant as far as going after guys in the portal. They think they're going to be two big time players. Bryce Levitt got a little bit more playing time towards the end of the season, a more versatile guy. But I know those two guys were a big reason why Florida didn't go all in the portal. Then also Austin Barber returning. So when you factor those three guys, because then it's like you're bringing transfers, then you have to almost recruit these guys to stay. But they
Right.
felt like, they felt like those three guys made a lot of strides, especially the younger guys, Westfall and Bryce Lovett. That Florida's like, hey, I don't think we need to overextend here, and get some guy that maybe we're gonna have for a year or two, where we have some youth and some guys that are really turning heads right now. I think that was a big thing.
I'll get right back to the video. But first, I appreciate BetUS for all their support. Just quickly, make sure you are betting with them and use their code YouTube150. That'll get you a 150% sign up bonus on your first deposit. And you'll also get 125% on your next two deposits, all up to $2,000. I appreciate BetUS for their support. So you mentioned Florida fans telling you like, hey, why aren't we offering this person or going after that person? And I think kind of the fan base like underlying fear is that UF moves too slow in the portal, and that's why they aren't hitting on some of these people. So you certainly believe though that it is more that they are just incredibly selective and targeted who they go after, as opposed to just maybe too slow of an approach.
No, I think for me myself, I think it's kind of a mixture. There are times where I've seen guys get offered, and I'm like, and they'll offer them, but they might be like number 9 or number 10, like kind of jumping in the mix. But at the same time, I mean, it's worked for the most part. You look at Florida's additions to the portal. I mean, they've had a lot of success when you actually break it down. So it's like hard to kind of go against your strategy a little bit. But like myself, I think it's a mixture of both. But this portal, we kind of knew that, especially in the winter window, there wasn't a ton of spots to work with. So I understood that. Initially, before the Dallas Wilson stuff, they targeted a lot of wide receivers. And once they offered them, a lot of kids went elsewhere. Some kids went to Texas Tech. You've seen some kids go to other different schools. You're like, man, how are we losing these kids to schools like Texas Tech and stuff like that? But that was also around the time when Dallas Wilson was behind the scenes trying to get out of his situation with Oregon. So I think Florida kind of had a hinge there, kind of knowing that something could potentially happen. and it all kind of worked out. So that's receiver came to mind because there were some kids on the board and receiver that they jumped in the mix for kind of fairly late after other schools, but it all worked out. I think when you look at it, and people looked at like the punter they got, Tommy Domain from Michigan, and like, oh, we got a punter. Why are we not going after these skilled guys? But when you look at punter, Jeremy Crawshaw's gone. They signed a kid, Hayden Craig, out of high school. But do you really want a true freshman going back there handling snaps in big
I mean,
games?
that's the ideal, right? The ideal is 4 years for
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's like I think people looked at that. So punter, it's the not so sexy pick in a lot of fans' eyes. But I think they got, and then you look at backup quarterback, they had to hit certain positions, and I think they did a good job of doing that. So now with the youth coming in, they have those filled out. I think they can be a little bit more open in the spring when it comes to certain positions.
Well, you're speaking to the punter's wife, so I think it's the sexiest position of all, and
Okay,
I'm
yeah, no, I was going to say exactly right.
about that signing. But you mentioned O line. Are there any positions, other positions that you really think that there is a need, and Florida will go maybe aggressively at in the spring window?
I think edge the jack position. I mean, losing TJ Searcy late in the game was kind of a stinger. A guy that he's still on the younger side, but had some good success early through the first few years at Florida. Jack Pyburn obviously leaving the program as well. You get Kofi Asar, a kid from UMass, who obviously is at that position. You got him out of the portal. I talked to a few other SEC assistants that their school didn't go after him, but they're kind of pushing the staff like, hey, we got to go after this guy. This guy's big time. So I know the consensus on the people around, people were pretty excited about that kid out of UMass. I think he could be a big time player over the next couple of years. So I think that was a good get for Florida, but they still need a little bit more depth there. I think with Shamar James leaving, maybe possibly you can get an upperclassman linebacker to kind of add some more veteran experience in that room. I think overall, though, with Pup Howard, Miles Graham, Aaron Childs, you have some good youth in that room too. But that's a position from what I've heard that maybe they could add a guy in the spring, depending, like I said, who's on the board. If it's a no-brainer guy they want to go after, that's, hey, we got to go after this kid. I can see that, but I don't think they're going to overextend and maybe get more of a reserve type. I don't think they need to do that. And probably the other one too, maybe safety. Adrian Maddox, obviously, he committed to Florida for a short period of time, then flipped to Georgia in the portal just a few months ago. Obviously, you finished well with Stubbs and Laganza Hayward, but you still lose Turquoise Bridges, some of the three
Yeah.
upperclassmen at the position. So, they have a lot of good youth at the position. You still, like I said, Bryce Thornton. Um, yeah, you still Bryce Thornton, some other guys, Jordan Castell, but I still think safety after not getting Adrian Max late in the game, maybe they try to go after one more. But I think overall, I think edge is probably the biggest one. I just think after losing Pyburn and Searcy, they could add another body in that room.
Okay, so you don't have to say any names, but with some of the coaching changes that have happened, how concerned should Billy Napier be about the upcoming portal window from a roster retention standpoint?
I think we saw most of it already. I mean, a lot of the guys, in my opinion, that I kind of had a feeling were going to transfer already kind of exited the program. Obviously, you're going to have some in the spring. I mean, no matter what, you can have the best situation possible. Guys are going to get beat out on the depth chart, and they're going to say, "Hey, I'm going to go elsewhere."
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be too much from the new positions, though. I think, obviously, when I think of safety, too, with Vinny Sunseri, I mean, it's a talented group. A lot of established guys that probably think, hey, I don't think it's probably the grass is always greener on the other side. I'm already kind of established myself in Gainesville. And I don't see guys like Laganza Hayward or Hilton Stubbs. They just got to Florida. I don't think they would be the type to kind of jump ship that quickly. Obviously, their relationship with Will Harris was a big factor, but I think a lot of it has to do with they're comfortable at Florida too, and obviously Billy Napier's vision. I don't think it's going to be as big as people think. I really don't. I think if guys are going to transfer out in the spring, it's going to be more just to their individual success or where they sit in the depth chart. Some of the guys that we already saw leave the program are the ones already left in the winter window. I think we saw most of the damage already. That's in my personal opinion.
All right. Well, that will calm some Gator fan fears for sure. Corey, I really appreciate you joining me. Please tell everybody where they can follow you on social media and read your work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, obviously we are working at Gators Online and On3 Network. We're running a deal right now, so it's just $1 to get in the door. And then obviously Gators Online and Twitter, that's our handle. And myself is just Corey_Bender. And yeah, man, we're always rocking and rolling, a lot of recruiting, so it never stops.
All right. Well, we appreciate you. This is always a good time. We'll
Yeah,
have to
thank you so much.
we'll have to have you back on over the summer with all the official visits when those happen. But I appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.